I said like, I have that exact same bowl.
Answer patients should watch Matrix.
Now I'm gonna get.
Young 2021.
Yeah. But I think that one of the main difference between alcohol versus weed is the externalities, as in how does it affect the people around you?
Yeah.
Smoke.
Congratulations, Justin, on your what was it? 5 months now, cigarette free.
By the time this episode is out, I think it's gonna be 5 months.
Nice,
right
dude.
now it's 4.5-ish, I think.
Yeah,
How are you feeling?
Yeah.
Well, to be honest, it's not very good.
You
I
still
would
have those
say-
daily cravings every night before you go to bed?
Well, I don't have that craving that much these days.
Right.
But, well, every time I see someone smoke, or, well, especially if you have someone in your circle that smokes, then, well,
It triggers you.
Yeah, it's tough, man.
it triggers me a lot.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I
actually,
made it
why
that
did
far.
you want to quit in the first place?
Well, I'm pretty sure I mentioned this before in our
Right.
podcast. I made it a
New
personal
Year
2021
resolution
resolution kind of thing.
sort of. I wanted to be healthier,
Right.
mentally and physically. Well, mentally, that's why I went to a shrink. You all know that.
Right. Yes.
But well, physically, well, my schedule and my lazy ass don't really work out that much. So the least I could do is, well, quit smoking, I guess. And well, like that's how my personal feeling is. Like it's still tough.
Yeah.
It's not no longer a physical thing. It's more of a psychological thing. I see
Interesting.
someone holding one. And I'm like,
Yeah, and you want to.
Yeah.
I
wanna get some
one
of
as
that?
well. But then if we're trying to be more accurate, I think. Well, there are actually it's very well documented timelines out there
Go for
For
it.
like
to describe
cold
your,
turkey, like cigarettes cold
like,
turkey.
yeah, a cold turkey or what it actually happens to you when
Right,
you quit
right, right.
smoking. I'm pretty sure you two.
I don't know. I have no
haven't
idea.
Experienced any of that?
No.
I bet you never smoked.
I have never smoked a single cigarette.
Yeah. I would
Or
expect
blunt.
that. Since you're not too familiar, I would allow me to.
yeah, go for it.
Yeah.
I did some research, well, on those timelines. This is the timeline from health.com and also healthline.com and also a couple more resources that I checked on. So after the first hour of like your last cigarette, like your heart rate, you already dropped back to a normal level. Because when you smoke, your blood pressure will actually build, and that's what gives us the head rush or
Right. The nicotine rush.
the feeling of I'm more energetic now.
Right.
Mm.
Right.
I feel like a lot of people, well, usually when it's back then, half the reason why I smoke is like I want that head rush. I want to be more energetic. I want to
Yep.
be less tired, especially if I do like 15-hour shoot, 20-hour shoot, for example, on set. Like cigarette is what keeps me awake. So I'll smoke. I think the most I've smoked is like half a pack or almost 1 pack in one shoot.
How many is in a pack? Like 12?
20.
20 packs. Sorry, not 20
20
packs.
cigarettes.
20 cigarettes a
yeah.
day.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of normal for an addict.
Yeah.
Right.
Anyway, let's go back to that timeline, right?
Yep. Okay. After 1 hour, heart rate goes back to normal. Your blood pressure drop. 2 days. Within 2 days, just 48 hours, like your taste and sense, like your sensibility will heighten.
Makes sense.
Because
Makes sense.
whenever you smoke, it actually messes up your taste bud. Some research will say that it changed your size of your taste bud. So when it recovers, then everything will taste better. Or some would say that nicotine actually blocks out some of your nerve ends.
Okay.
Interesting.
Interesting.
It mess up your nerve ends, so you don't taste as much.
Yeah.
Isn't that a pros for someone like you?
No. Well,
Now you can.
That- I would definitely say so,
I'm
yeah.
already skinny, but but then like what makes it all the more amusing when you consider the fact that like cigarettes company used to market cigarettes as a weight loss product. I don't know if you know that.
I did not know that. Wow.
Like back in the 80s or
Like Mad Men.
Straight
era.
from Mad Men,
Yeah,
straight
yeah.
from
Yeah,
Don
it's like
Draper
Don
bullshit.
like they would have like slogans like, oh, to keep a slender figure, no one can deny. Reach for a lucky instead of a sweet. Which is all very problematic and all kinds of mess up in
Yeah.
today's standard. But that is the slogan for Lucky Strike for a long time. But then yeah, it makes sense. Well, you don't want to eat when food doesn't taste as
Yeah,
good,
yeah,
I
yeah,
guess.
yeah.
And actually, yeah, I guess when I used to smoke a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and when people on set smokes a lot, like we don't eat that much because, well, it's stressful, right? So I smoke a cigarette, I don't feel as
Stressed.
not no, I don't have the incentive to eat that much. I feel like I have the feeling of I'm kind of full, or
After a
I
cigarette?
don't have the urge to eat that much.
Interesting. So it actually kind of numbs your palate and kind of makes you feel.
I think it's not
satiated.
just about the palate. Just like caffeine does
Ah.
suppress your urge to eat,
Yeah.
and that's why people
Interesting.
drink a lot of caffeine when they fast.
Yeah.
It's more like a head rush, more of a
Yeah.
the chemical side of things.
Yeah,
It's not just
interesting.
all with the taste.
Yeah.
Okay, but day 3 or till day 5, which is, well, if anyone listening to this have attempted to quit smoking, would known to be the shittiest days.
Day 3.
Yeah, because I usually, I've attempted to quit smoking for no less than 10 times before
That's common. That's
before
common.
this attempt, which is the longest run, 5 months. And because, well, that is where the nicotine withdrawal actually kicks in. Like, apart from the emotional stuff, like I'll get really irritated or somewhat depressed because I'm like, oh, all the nicotine is out of my system now.
Yeah.
There's no thing that gives me the kick. So I would like really like trigger,
Yeah.
easily trigger, very irritated, very angry sometimes. And well, there's also a thing called a quitter's flu.
Quitter's flu.
Have
Quitter's
you heard
flu.
of this?
No, I have not heard of it.
So
Me neither.
it's
You actually get
so
flu?
It's actually like you get symptoms that feels like you're having a flu.
Right.
Interesting.
Like you get headache, you might get dizzy, you might want to puke.
Do you get a fever?
Some kind of
Not
withdrawal
fever.
syndrome, right?
Yeah, withdrawal syndrome,
right.
basically. Like you sweat a lot,
Cold
you
turkey.
cough a lot. Like that's the cold turkey.
Right.
And well, I think I actually experienced my first quitter flu. It was when I was 20 years old. So I was like,
Really?
I was year 3.
Interesting.
I remember this very clearly. I was seeing someone at the time, and of course, well, not of course, but not a lot of people like a smoker boyfriend. So
Right.
At the time, she was like, "Oh, maybe you should quit smoking." I
Mm-hmm.
was like, maybe I'll try quit smoking." Day 1, day 2, all right, I guess. Day 3 comes around. I was bed bound.
Oh
I
gosh.
couldn't lift my bed. I was
Wow.
I feel so sick that I couldn't leave my bed. I didn't know why. I thought I got a flu or catch a cold. Like I was really, really feeling bad. I wanted to puke, sweating a lot. So, but then a friend came over to visit me. Like, oh, how are you doing? Like, I was like, I feel like I'm about to die. Like, a very bad flu. Like, and so I was like, oh, you want to go smoke a cigarette? I was like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, I'm sick. How much you want me to? Like, it was like, oh, like, but you haven't smoked for a couple of days, right? I was like, yeah. But then just go for a smoke. Maybe I'll feel better. And I feel better after.
After you. Oh my gosh.
It's like gone. Well, like it's only till recently when I started doing research on like this episode that I was like, oh, that is a quitter flu.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
so,
I see.
yeah.
I see.
Like, and there's one thing when you
Right,
when you
right.
start to quit smoking, you actually cough a lot more than you do
What?
before.
What?
Yeah,
Why?
interesting, right? The thing is, when you smoke on a regular basis, your
Yeah.
lungs and your what is it called? Bronchitis, like
Yeah.
Bronchitis.
is so used to having dirt
Bronchus. Yeah.
in your lung that they
Alveoli.
won't have the need to clear it out to detox. Like you can train your lungs to
Gosh.
to
That's messed up.
because it happens too often, right? Your body is used to having the toxic lung is the new normal. So your lung won't feel the need to detox.
Yeah.
But yeah, we will cough a whole lot because your body is trying to reset itself and get rid of the nicotine or the dirt or the nasty shit. But most people will tell you, or medically, if you get past the first 3 to 14 day ish, it's all psychological from there, and it should be smooth sailing. Which
Yeah.
I guess it's true because these days, even though I do crave a cigarette from time to time, I don't have the. It doesn't bother me physically. It's more like I kind of.
It's more of a mental challenge rather than
Yeah.
a
Yeah, yeah,
physical
yeah.
desire.
It's
or
more
need.
about my friend is smoking. I was like, I kind of want to ask for one. Not
You
like,
gotta fit in, man.
it's not like I'm shaking physically. Oh
Yeah,
my god, I need
okay.
to have that. But yeah, after months, just 1 month, 30 days, your lung function will already start to improve, and which is very noticeable for me, because at the time it was about that time Niall or as young Hyson
Yeah.
and we had the whole let's work
Let's go
out,
for a run, right? Yeah.
let's
yeah, I
not
heard about
lock
that too.
ourselves
Yeah.
and work on our art stuff all day long. And that 2K run at Guntong is a lot easier. Whereas, when I first tried that, when I was still smoking, I felt like I literally just 2K run.
Yeah.
I pant for like half an hour. It took me like half an hour to an hour
Yeah.
to feel better. But since I quit smoking, it's just like 5 minutes, I guess. Take a 5 minutes breaks and I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you said you've because off camera here you were comparing marijuana or other drugs with cigarettes, right? And you're saying cigarettes are 10 times more addictive, and you tried a lot of other substances too, right?
Yeah.
I guess the question for me is, how would you compare smoking cigarettes with some of these harder drugs? With the exception of maybe weed, I would consider weed as kind of a soft one.
Yeah, you can say even shroom is kind of soft
Yeah.
one as well.
Yeah.
Anything that is natural is
Yeah.
kind of soft. How would I compare that?
I mean, tobacco is also natural, I guess. But then again,
True.
you
Well,
know,
I mean, okay, for at least in my case, cigarettes, I don't see it as a drug. I don't
you don't see cigarettes as a drug.
I wouldn't disagree with that.
no,
Interesting.
like in a
but-
way that if I do drugs, I consciously tell myself that I'm gonna smoke a joint tonight, or I'm taking a tap right now, or I'm gonna pop.
Yeah,
a
yeah.
pill.
You don't make it an event, or you don't
No,
make it
it's
as
so
a thing.
addictive for him already. It's so ingrained part of
yeah.
his daily routine.
Yeah,
It doesn't
that's
seem
actually
that
very
rough.
true.
Friends.
I have not seen Friends.
I've seen Friends.
Sorry, I'm
not,
just gonna
not like a
draw
lot.
like a saying from there. Like if you have seen that show, not Joey, Chandler's very addicted
Chandler, yes.
to smoking cigarettes, and what he said is like, just imagine you're not holding a cigarette. Is that is the part of you like when you're not holding a cigarette, something is missing.
Yeah.
That is how I felt on a day-to-day basis when
Wow.
I usually smokes. It's not like it's not like
But it's not the same when you're like popping Molly. It's like, just imagine you're not popping Molly.
Yeah.
It's like, no, not really.
it's like
right,
a
you know?
very it's became an unconscious thing. Whereas
Yeah.
with drugs, I still have to dedicate a portion of my time,
Yeah.
Yeah.
or I am doing drugs.
Yeah.
It's very different. It's a very habitual thing.
You know what? Maybe we should just like coin the term "I'm doing cigarettes" as well, because I feel like that's a lot more devastating. That effect of that addiction.
I would say
Hearing
it's
that.
devastating because of addictive.
Yeah.
And you do it so repetitively.
Yeah.
Consuming MDMA, I don't think you could do that repetitively. I don't think you could consume 20 pills a day, at least from
gonna
what I
OD.
know.
You
You're
will
going to
literally
OD and
OD.
die.
Yeah.
And the reason why cigarettes is bad for you is not because the one cigarette, to be honest, I don't think it's terrible for you. But
Well, yeah,
but,
sure.
But I mean, if that becomes a habit, then it becomes a lot more problematic, right?
Yeah.
I think the difference is right. Cigarette makes you more quote unquote functional, whereas with
Interesting.
most drugs that I've tried, it kind of put me in an alternative mind state that doesn't help my productivity.
Okay, what about Ritalin and what are the other ones
Adderall.
called? Adderall.
Adderall.
Yeah.
Modafinil.
Well,
Yeah.
I don't see.
Have you ever done those?
That's why I say it's a recreational thing. I
Yeah.
do have
Experience.
I do have ADD, and
Okay,
I
yeah.
am prescribed it right now. I
For-
wasn't before.
Which one is it, Ritalin or
I
Adderall?
am on Vyvanse right
Right.
now.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know what that is, but
Vyvanse is like newer strand of the Adderall family. Basically, still in pill. I think your reaction. I assume you know something about it, but
Yeah.
I'll share. From my experience, I've tried. I think I've tried Ritalin. I've tried. I think I've tried Ritalin. I just wasn't sure whether that was
If it was-
prescribed to me by someone else.
yeah.
Well, at least from my experience, Ritalin is ADD drug. It helps me more focus. But then with Vyvanse, it also have to kick to it. It also
Right.
makes me a bit more happy. Like like
It actually makes you feel happier.
my mood is lighter. But now, okay, Mister.
It makes you want to learn things, man. Because I use it to study
Really?
for once, and I think the feeling, how I would describe it, it's like constant flow of caffeine into your body, but at the same time you're enjoying what you're reading a lot, despite the fact that you're reading some very dry facts.
Wow.
You could be reading Shakespeare's and you'd love.
Well,
not trying to offend
now
any
just
literature.
you just offended like all of the entire English community. The English
You
community.
could be reading what's something really dry. Some stupid historical facts that,
Sure.
In the First World War or something like
Yeah,
that.
sure.
But I find that very, very interesting. when I was
Interesting.
on it.
I mean, so listening to that, it feels like that having these recreational drugs, right? Taking them, it seems more of a lifestyle choice and enjoyment instead of like part of your life, like a cigarette is, right? So,
Well,
right, I want to listen to more about that, right? You just enjoy
I
it so
just see it as like a escapism.
much, right?
It's not like I know like a lot of people prefer smoking with my friends or we're hanging out, so we're
Yeah.
smoking while watching some dumb video.
Yeah, it's like hanging out, it's like adding something more fun to it.
Yeah, it's more like it's like drinking at a party,
Yeah,
right? You're trying
exactly.
to up your experience. But
Yeah.
whereas in my case, well, I'm pretty introverted, as you two may know. It's like I don't even like smoking with people all that much. It's like I had like
Interesting.
two high school buddy of mine that would stop by from time to time that I would smoke with, but then I spent most of my days smoking on my own, and it's more of like I'm craving that escapism. It's more of a sedated experience. Well, now that I'm clean and I'm sober,
Relatively
then
clean,
I would
relatively
know
sober.
that, well, actually, I was trying to, maybe I was showing signs of depression or there's some
Right.
stuff that I'm trying to really repress. And that's why I'm craving for that. I'm trying to get put down before I go to bed. And I did that till late 2019, I think. Like from like 2017 till like 2019, I basically smoked, especially for my final years. I'm pretty sure every day I go back home, I'll just light up and go
And
to
just
bed.
get stoned. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wake and bake.
No, bake,
Bacon and,
sleep, yeah.
and then sleep, yeah. Insane.
And
Wow.
s-
But like having that kind of routine of smoking weed, right? And breaking from it, because you said you're now, cleaner.
yeah.
Compared to cigarettes, it's completely different. It sounds like you have like no withdrawal from weed. I don't know if you had any.
I would say it's a lot more easy.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing is that I was so reliant on it to put me to bed.
Right.
It wasn't too easy to sleep. But then I had the help of melatonin. And just bought a bottle of melatonin from Amazon. And just take a tab. And take a
Take a tab.
take a pill.
Yeah.
You should
Yeah.
tablet or pill of that before I go to bed. Then basically fixed. And like, yeah, I don't have any physical syndrome, which I think we can get into this later, which is whether weed is actually
Addictive. Sure.
I think
Yeah.
this has been a very debatable topic for a long time. But in my case, I didn't feel anything.
Have you done some research on that?
I think
Whether or not weed is
I think
addictive?
I did some research on Google, and there are a lot of like both sides, like someone never feel anything, but then there are a lot of like medical research and said, it's actually not just psychological, it's also physical. But at least from my case, and
You
as
didn't have any physical like
often that I
dependencies,
smoke, I don't
at
really
least.
have the dependency.
right.
Because I think, speaking of
before-
Amsterdam, right? I know you had a great trip to Amsterdam. You've tried
Yes,
a
I
lot
have.
of things and very. I heard you went to a different realm. That's
I would say I've elevated from my mortal realms and
Right.
into
Mortal
another
realm.
another
Wait, so what
dimension.
did you do
Right.
for your trip?
So I would say I'm not really an avid weed smoker. I don't. First of all, I've never smoked anything in my life, whether it's weed, whether it's vape or anything. I kind of believe that. Anything put in my lungs is pretty bad. It's kind of permanent.
Wait, so you
tar
haven't
and stuff like that.
smoked and-
I haven't smoked
he
a
does
single
edible.
thing.
He does edibles.
That's right. So
Wait,
every
what
time
about-
I
you
do
think,
what
and you
about-
think putting things into your stomach is bad for you?
I think at least the
Wait, what about
YouTube videos or
what
medical
about
research I've done.
hookahs? Hookahs, like
Shisha.
shisha.
No, never done shisha ever.
shouldn't do it.
I don't. It's actually worse because there's no filter.
Yeah.
But
Go
so
on,
But so your lung is like clean.
pretty clean, I'd say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
please.
I have never done any of that. Even though it's very clean, my stamina is horse shit.
Yeah.
But anyway, I don't smoke. I always do edibles, and it really knocks me out, right? Because taking edibles and smoking weed is like two completely different things. I can't say it is like completely different, but I know from the literature, right? When you're eating it versus when you're smoking it, I believe it's THC 12 when you smoke it, so it's a different compound that gets metabolized in your lungs.
All right.
And when
These
you
are called cannabinoids, right?
Yes, that's right. Cannabinoids that metabolize differently when you smoke versus when you digest it. When you eat it, your stomach digests it, and the enzymes that activate the THC that goes into your blood is completely different.
Right.
It's 12 and 9, I believe.
What's the difference between 12 and 9?
So one of them, it's a lot faster, and I think 12 hits you in your because you smoke it in your lungs. It's really immediately metabolize enzymes, and it goes to your brain very quickly. But it doesn't pass through your brain membrane. Some stuff because of the
Okay.
size of it doesn't pass through inside.
Oh.
But the THC 9, because I think it's smaller and it passes through that membrane, it hits
Okay.
you harder.
Okay.
Obviously, because you're digesting, it takes
Right.
longer to react.
I heard you met Van Gogh in person.
I have. I did. What a wonderful chap. So, the story is,
All right. Let's hear it.
I think you were in London that time, but
I was invited.
Yeah, you were
I was
invited,
too,
but
I
this
didn't-
guy-
I had, gotta work, man.
the square over here is working, and back then I was just a university student with 3 other of my friends. So, it was just before my finals, but then my friend from US took a spring break. It was like April-ish, and he was like, "Yo, I'm in London to hang out with the boys. Let's go." And then we hang out, and then it's like, "Yo, let's go to Amsterdam, bro." I'm like, "Dude, my finals in like 3 weeks. I can't do
Just
this."
for a bit of context, like going to Amsterdam from London, if you take one of these Easy Jets or Ryanair
Yeah.
airlines, it's incredibly cheap. You can book
Super
it
fast.
2 days before. It's £20, which is equivalent to 25, 30 US dollars.
Yeah.
Yep.
Damn.
And it's only like an hour and a half to get there. So
Yeah.
it's literally
Damn.
like it's like going
It's incredibly
to
accessible.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't let this guy live in London because he's gonna be in Amsterdam
Yeah,
most of the
yeah,
time.
yeah. So it's like going to Macau, but like going to Macau is like an hour, right? So add half an hour. So if you travel from I don't know Daibo or something, you have half an hour to get to Sarangwan. Then it's exactly how it goes to Amsterdam.
Oof. Now I'm
Right.
glad that I've never been like spent a long time in the UK.
Yeah.
And so I was very reluctant at first. And then later on, he convinced me over a little bit of wheat brownie. He was like, "This is the weed here. It's so crap. Imagine
you're
when
gonna
you
have
can
a
get
bit of a
there."
teaser. You're gonna have a little bite of edible here. We're gonna get the real thing in Amsterdam.
Yeah.
So a gateway truck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he was like, "Yo, Amsterdam, bro, we can do shrooms." And I was like, "I don't know if I'm ready for that, bro." And he's like, "Nah, man, I had like this insane experience the first time I took it." And then this other friend of mine who also went with me, I was like, "Yeah, this is the best thing ever in my life." I'm like, "Should I do it? Should I not?" I was like, And then something came up. I think one of the scheduled lectures was canceled on Thursday, and I was like, "Fuck it." And then it was Monday. I was like, "Fuck it, let's book flights." 3 days later, took the flight to Amsterdam, and I'm there.
So now you're 2.5 weeks before your
Yes,
finals.
yes.
Go
And
on.
then I was like, so excited. First of all, like I was like, "Fuck it, I'm here. I might as well enjoy." First night we just did.
YOLO.
First night we just did brownies. We had the whole trip planned out, right? Because if you want to visit Amsterdam, there's a lot of tickets you want to book, right?
Yeah.
So museums that you have to book in advance. The good ones, like I forgot what there's the Van Gogh Museum. You have to book in
Sure.
advance, and there's also it starts with an R. It's like Roth or something. I forgot.
Rotterdam.
Yeah, Rotterdam,
Rotterdam.
like
Yeah.
Rotterdam, something. You have to book in
Yeah.
advance. So I think we couldn't book Rotterdam, but we booked Van Gogh. So we planned out the entire trip to take the shrooms, travel our way slowly while it's digesting to the Van Gogh Museum, and then while we're tripping balls, visit the beautiful artwork of Van Gogh. And then later on, we go to the Eye Museum in Amsterdam, which is the film kind of museum, which my friend, who I will not disclose his name, I guess, maybe he doesn't want to be disclosed. He's very film enthusiast. Right? Let's put it that way. He's a film enthusiast, so you want to go there, which I'm also down.
I think I've been to that one as well.
Yeah. So I have never been into art ever in my life. When I was a kid, I used to paint things because you know, when you were kids in Hong Kong, your parents will always give you these extracurricular activities. You got to go Kumon math. You got to go do that. You got to learn instruments. You got to learn painting and all these rounded education. Right? Of course, back then it was just pay money, the kid paints some stuff, and then the teacher gets money, and that's about it.
Yeah.
Have no interest at all in art. But I thought, I'm in Amsterdam. I might as well visit one of the greatest artists of all time.
Yeah.
Arguably.
Yeah.
Whatever. Took shrooms. We were a bit early by the time we got there, so we were sitting outside. I've never had shrooms before in my life. I didn't know what to expect. But so at the beginning, the high was kind of like weed. It was just like, oh, time's getting slower. Oh, okay, wow. It's like, oh, okay, I'm tripping balls now. Oh, interesting. And it's like, okay, check the time. It's time to go to the Van Gogh Museum. Perfect. I go in, walk up the escalator. I see this big painting. The first was really big. The whole wall is there.
The one with a pod.
Not yet. No.
Not yet. Okay.
So I was just mildly tripping before I went in. But by the time I get the escalator, I had the big painting on the wall. I lean a little closer to see like the details and stuff. I try to appreciate art. I wasn't into it. I was like, look at this painting. It's so nice. And then I was like, wait a minute. It's moving. And I was like, this is a museum. Why are people hanging artworks on like strings so that it move and stuff? I'm like, it's so weird.
Gotta
right?
be the aircon.
Yeah, it's so weird. It's the fan. Why is it moving? And then I look at the ground.
The ground is moving.
It's like the ground's moving. And then I realized, first of all,
I'm moving.
I was doing this constantly. And I was like, what the hell's going on? And then I'm like, oh, I'm tripping balls. And I saw it immediately because the museum's very quiet, right?
Yeah.
People are like enjoying like that. And I'm like, my friend, I'm tripping balls, dude. This thing's moving.
Dude, that wasn't what I heard. I heard you were squeaking.
No. That was the initial stage. I'm not done yet.
Okay.
Right?
This is how you define mildly stoned. Sorry, mildly high.
This was the beginning of
right.
the journey. Right.
Okay.
I slowly move into the side room where there's all these paintings. Beautiful, beautiful paintings. Which I've never enjoyed in my life. But suddenly I felt that I was speaking to Van Gogh directly, looking at these paintings.
Wow.
I could just hear him. I could just like feel his emotions when looking at these things. Now, there was this one very special painting. It wasn't like Starry Nights or those like classic. It was just in the corner of the room. It was a cupboard in the kitchen, which was just stacks of bowls and plates. Okay. Very regular plates and bowls.
Go on.
And then I looked at this bowl. I shit you not. I was like, I wanted to laugh so hard, but I couldn't because I realized everybody was quiet. So I was like,
that's how you
and then I was like holding laughter and I was like, and then I squeaked out like, and then all my friends were all tripping out and he's like, yo, you're making a really loud noise in the scene. And he's like, yo, calm down. And he just took me out
for a timeout.
Yeah, for a timeout. And then I sat down on the bench. I was still giggling like a little girl, right? And he's like, yo, you okay? Yo, what's wrong, man? I was like, I shit you not. I said, like, I have that exact same bowl. like I saw that bowl painting of those like kitchenware, and I was like, I have that.
Reminds you of a bowl.
Exact same bowl, and I was like, I could be Van Gogh. I could paint that bowl. I would have been that person.
Maybe you did when you were a kid.
And so, like, that was the beginning of the trip where I was like really
embarrassing yourself.
But beyond that, well, first of all, I really didn't care anymore. At that point, I was just like, oh my gosh, I was tripping balls. And seeing the floor, I could see these geometric patterns, which is very common when you're tripping on shrooms. It's just seeing lights everywhere. It's just insane trip. And then I walk through the entire museum. I look at each of these pieces of artwork. I really look into it, and I'm listening
you keep thinking like, "Oh, I can be a better painter."
Yeah. There's a few of these There are a few more of these moments where I saw like this painting of wheat fields. A very
I
classic
could've
Van
painted
Gogh.
that shit.
No, not that. But when he painted the birds, you know the classic.
Right. You know the
Yeah.
classic how you have
It was one
two
line.
lines.
Yeah, no, it's one line,
And a wheat.
and then two like kind of
Curves,
curves that come
right,
out of it,
right.
like the wings.
I don't even draw the line anymore. I
You know,
just
they
draw
just
the curves.
yeah, and he drew that, and on the wheat field, very very classic. I was like, oh my god, I draw birds like that when I was a kid. Oh my god, it's another triggering moment. And then just like, but like throughout the entire experience
Yeah.
of that museum, I felt like I had a direct line to Van Gogh, to the divine, to speaking the emotions and feeling what he felt when he drew those paintings, like especially the ones with faces where you could really feel that person. And you know, having that experience really changed my entire view on art scene.
Still
Like,
does or
I definitely think so.
okay.
This
I
guy
definitely
went
think
to
so.
South Beach, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I believe
Right.
ever since, so you're more appreciate to
I
art,
100%
paintings and stuff.
appreciated art, like beyond when I was before that.
Under influence.
Yeah, because after the influence, after I'm sober, I still have like very high affinity towards art. Even though, of course, right, I'm no expert. I don't know anything about expressionist art and stuff like that. I just appreciate a lot more than just oil on canvas.
Yeah.
I don't care about that before. But now I was just like, right, some guy put real effort and real emotions through that and trying to tell me something. And now I see that. And every time I look at something, a piece of artwork or something like that, I would try to at least, understand what he's trying to feel. Or at least try to get at the feeling, the emotions behind that. And it really resonates with me as a person because we all have emotions and we all have some form of expressing it.
That is
Go
really
on.
interesting.
Right. So that was my lesson learned in Van Gogh. And then later on, we went to the Eye Museum that I mentioned. We went to see this insane movie, which was called the mid 90s by Jonah Hill.
Oh.
His debut work,
Wait, you watched that while you're tripping?
I was
Oh,
tripping
that must be interesting.
balls. Now, that was another experience. It was unbelievable.
Have you seen that movie before?
I've not seen that movie.
That
but it's-
movie,
I've heard this experience.
Yeah, go
a few
ahead.
Times.
It's in a movie that is an homage to the 90s culture. You have these street kids, skate. It's a homage to the 90s culture, more specifically to the skateboard culture. Like
Yeah.
kids doing tricks at park, meeting friends. Also doing fuck shit, of fucking around with your friends,
Yeah.
smoking weed, going to parties and taking your cheap recorder and filming
Yeah.
people doing skate videos.
So you've seen that movie, right?
Yes,
of
I've
course.
seen this
Great.
movie.
Yeah.
That's very, very good.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Especially when you're stoned, right? So the story is very it's very simple. It's around this young kid. I don't know his age, 13, 14.
Right.
Young rebellion age. He got older brother who beats him. The abusive relationship. And then later on, he, because of home issues, he always goes out and finds this like misfits group of skater in the park, and he realized, wow, these guys skate so cool. I want to join them. So he like scrounges off his his money, his spare change, and then buys his skateboard. Or I think initially it was like something really.
It's just
whack.
his
it was like
whole story is just these guys hanging out.
Exactly. So he
Yeah.
he builds this
Stories.
relationship with this misfits group of skater, which each of the skaters have kind of this unique personality of archetype of people that you grow up with. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And throughout his growing up, it's kind of very classic coming of age movie where he meets these people, and each of these people that he look up to have their own internal struggle.
Yeah.
And while you're stoned, while you're taking shrooms, man, you relate to these people in a spiritual level, man. I'm telling you, like you look at them and you relate to them, each of them.
So you met Van Gogh in person.
Yeah,
You were able to connect with these fictional characters.
Yeah.
Too.
Because you just see yourself in all these, like every time you watch a movie, you relate to someone. And I'm able to relate to everybody in that movie in some sort of way that like it was just beyond the simple, oh yeah, I feel bad for that guy. Like I saw myself as that skater kid. I saw myself as that guy who tried to make it. I saw myself as that guy who just parties around saying fuck shit and just ruins their lives, right? And it was really, really deeply insightful experience.
Right.
Not just like, oh, what a great movie. It was insightful to myself, like
Okay.
how I saw myself.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, obviously, the fact that you were on shrooms elevated the movie experience a lot.
Yes.
Let me ask you this question. Is there a movie that you would really, really want to watch the first time when you're high? Sorry, no, not when you're high, when you're on shrooms.
So I suggest movie
First time.
this
Yeah.
Yeah. If you've never
Or-
seen this movie, watch this
for
while you're shrooms.
people to watch when they trip balls.
Yeah. I think maybe The Matrix could be
Maybe like Forrest Gump,
Forrest Gump.
something that's light but
Yeah,
also has a
I
lot
think
of deep.
I thought it's
Matrix
a
might
little-
be a bit scary.
Yeah, I was
Okay.
thinking
Maybe
that too.
too intense.
Okay. I mean, he's
You're-
definitely gonna
I
start
had a-
squeaking
Yeah.
when you see
It will-
Neo
it'll-
coming out of
no,
the tube.
It would make people like trip out, especially like you can
Okay.
you can straight up get an existential crisis.
Right. You want something
oh my God,
lighthearted.
is everything fake?
Yeah.
Are we
Okay.
in the Matrix? And like I don't know, like some of the more sensitive
Okay.
people.
Okay.
Like everyone trips differently.
Well, it all
might,
depends.
triggers
It
them.
all depends on what you want to get experience and who the person target audience is. Maybe someone who has some sort of existential issue can watch The Matrix and have to actually face his existential crisis. Someone who's like, I don't know, like having like a big life crisis. Someone who's achieved something and realized,
I
oh,
would
actually, all this is
say-
vague. I'm extremely glad you brought this topic up, by the way, because now I want to move into this really specialist segment that I've done a lot of research on lately.
Which
So-
is
In my old university, they have established the world #1 or first official psychedelic research center at Imperial College, headed by the guy Robin Cohart Harris,
okay.
who's basically a very, very knowledgeable doctor.
Okay. I've heard people using LSD to treat
That's right.
PTSD.
That's
Is
right.
That, wait,
That's
is that from
exactly
your school?
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Oh.
They have done extensive research on psychedelic LSD, shrooms, even DMT on how to. So they focus on three things. So mental health, social issues, and neuroscience. Right.
Okay.
So for the neuroscience of shrooms, I'll slowly get into this first. Right. Shrooms, the active ingredient, as you guys might know, is psilocybin. Psilocybin is actually not that reactive in your brain, but actually gets digested enzyme into psilocin, which then attaches itself. It's not a full attachment, but it's like a partial attachment to your brain H2A neural receptor, which is the receptor for serotonin.
Yeah.
Happiness.
Yeah,
The
Chemical.
hormone
it's been
associated with happiness.
It's been
right?
told as the love hormone, the happiness hormone, and whatnot.
And the thing that I lack, that's why I need to take SSRI on a day-to-day basis.
Yes, right. So all our antidepressants try to activate that receptors too.
Serotonin.
Exactly. So that receptor is actually in the cortex of your brain. So
Yeah.
what the cortex is the outer layer. Now you might think, oh, cortex is kind of center, right? So there's actually subcortex and more layers in your brain, but the cortex is
Yeah.
kind of like the outer layer, right? It doesn't target a very specific region of your brain, like the motor cortex or the visual cortex. It's kind of like general cortex, right?
Okay.
So they have done extensive research on how psilocybin reacts with your brain in terms of they do fMRI, so functional magnetic resonance imaging, which is kind of taking a snapshot, kind of X-ray for your brain.
Oh,
Right.
so sorry to disrupt you. I'm curious. Like when you mean like extensive research, do you mean like they do it with like mice?
No,
Or they
humans,
actually have
actual humans, actual
okay.
brains.
So they
Right.
have like people to like volunteers. Yo, I'm gonna give you some DMT today,
Exactly.
and then I'm gonna
Yeah.
scan your brain and see
Exactly.
how your brain is doing.
Yeah.
Oh,
all of this is funded. All of this is legal, of course. Though,
damn it!
first of
I should
all,
have signed up.
right, we forgot to do this disclaimer, but we'll do it now. This is just a normal show. We don't,
We don't claim any expertise.
Yeah, we don't
and-
claim
No,
expertise.
We also don't condone drug
Yeah, we don't
use.
promote drug use. We are just sharing experience and talking about it. Right. Disclaimer out.
Okay.
This research, legal, fully funded by government and other agencies, does have human trial, and they have human subjects that take these
Are they
psilocybin.
still doing trials?
Absolutely, they actually are looking more and more at these. Anyway, I'll talk about that later.
Okay.
So they have these subjects that come in. They actually inject them with the psilocybin, the drug, and then they have them in the fMRI machine, and they stare at this normal cross, just normal cross. I forgot what it's called. Anyway, so look at that, just nothing, and then the drugs kick in because they need to have a control and after scan, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So very interestingly, at the beginning of the research, their kind of hypothesis coming in was that, once you take psilocybin or LSD or these psychoanalytic drugs, psychoactive drugs,
Yeah.
you'll have an increased blood flow in your brain in specific regions that target something, and they want to find out what it is. Very interestingly, it's the opposite. They find decrease in blood flow in a very specific region of our brain that is called the default neural network. Right. This is, again, a very, very, very like high level stuff that nobody really know what it does. Like neuroscience, you need to know, is a very fresh new type of science that it's not really like physics where it's developed. It's quite new. It's quite young. Not a lot of stuff are known in the brain. Solidly.
Really?
Yes. So default neural network right now has, it's been termed the dark energy of the brain, though it's not
Why?
completely known. Right, we know there's a few things going on when this neural network gets light up. Right,
Yeah.
complex imaging. Right, when we look at complex imagery, this part of our brain lights up. When we think about thinking, so meta thinking, right, that part meta analysis, meta thinking about thinking, that lights up. Thinking about yourself and planning ahead in the far future, that part lights out. Right.
That's very specific.
Very specific. Right. So it's kind of trying to say that this is, psychologists have been trying to say this is your ego, your self, your sense of self, your sense of
Right.
belonging is in this neural network. Right. Of course, I'm no expert. Again, I want to state these are what people say when you take shrooms, DMT. Psychologists refer to this as an ego death. When you experience ego death, where you experience a detachment from everything that you own or everything that have you in it. Right? You want to say something just now?
Yeah, I
Okay?
just want to dial back a little here because you said the blood flow to this region called the default
Yes.
neural network decreases, right?
Yes, that's right.
Does that mean it's less activated? Does that
It's-
mean there's less? Right. Because
That's
I've
right.
read something, about weed. I'm sure you guys know this, but there's some sort of cognitive impairment.
That's right.
Temporarily, of course, it affects your normal functioning and all
Mm-hmm,
that stuff. I would imagine there's some kind of association.
Yeah, so I think there definitely is, but I would say personal experience, right? Because this research is really focused on psychedelic. I don't think they did
Right.
a lot on the difference between weed and shrooms. For personal experience, having tripped on shrooms and having tripped on weed, there's miles of difference.
Right.
The similarities are there.
You
I
wouldn't
would
say,
yeah.
would you say shrooms is like just on under like a different magnitude, or would you say the experience is completely different?
It's
I-
a
if you
completely
smoke
different
enough-
spectrum.
Right. If you smoke enough weed, are you gonna get that shroom high?
So at
No.
the start, no, definitely not. That
Okay.
like even if you smoke the best of the best weed, like you concentrated CBD and THC, you're never gonna get that experience. It's,
Sure.
it's on a different level of plane, but there's some similarities, like
Okay.
temporal differences, like temporal identification, kind of like your sense of time is
Yeah.
distorted,
Yeah.
and your vision is blurred. But when your vision is blurred on shrooms, you see things. Right. It's different.
Okay.
Because when you're high on shrooms, you see geometric patterns that come out of nowhere. When you're on weed, the idea of weed, it kind of like it inhibits your stop when you think of something, right? When you think of like word association, there's
Right.
like this whole long line of thinking. When you're on weed, it doesn't end.
Yeah.
But normally you kind of stop at like 3 words because your brain just don't
That's
care
fair.
anymore, right? But on weed, you have this thought and it just develops all the way there. But on shrooms, it injects new thoughts into it. That's my personal experience. It's not a medical thing, sorry. That's my opinion of it. You inject new thoughts into these pool, and then they get expanded infinitely, and it slowly infests your whole brain with this thought. Right. So
I'll
Back to-
say
yeah.
my shroom experience is quite different, but let's not go into that. I want,
Sure.
want you to hear your.
sure.
Finish
So
with
back
your
to the
day.
medical research
Yeah.
on what Imperial College is doing.
Yeah.
It's very interesting because this why they want to do psychedelic in the first place, right? Psychedelic, this word came from 2 Greek word, I think Greek or Latin, right? Psyche and delos. Psyche is the mind. Delos is to reveal.
Yeah.
So there's a very classic saying in psychedelic or psychology, rather, is that psychedelic is to the mind is what the microscope is to biology, the telescope to astronomy, right? It reveals what is in your mind, and it reveals deeply to what one person's like psyche or their mind is really thinking about themselves. With that in mind, you like that pun? They thought, let's do some more research on this and let's see how they could use this as a therapeutic way to like move past and to break through PTSD, for example. PTSD is something that they have also focused on. Another thing they've really focused on is cancer patients. Cancer patients often have a lot of existential issues. Just mention like watching The Matrix. Maybe they should watch The Matrix, right? They have a lot of existential anxiety because, sorry, I should mention specifically late-term cancer patients.
Yeah.
Cancer patients should watch Matrix.
Now I'm gonna get
Young 2021. We're calling you on this.
maybe. Anyway, so why do they have this? Obviously, because they're gonna die, or they're facing death. Maybe they're gonna die, right?
Yeah.
So let's watch Matrix. Maybe I'm living a fake life and I'm gonna go.
Very
to the
interestingly,
Matrix.
they prescribe them with psilocybin, and they find the treatment very effective in a way that.
Effective in what sense? Though?
Now let's go into this in details. People who take this in cancer patients, at least anecdotally, some of them have very high score afterwards about themselves and about the outlook of life. They do this with taking the questionnaire at the start and then after, and 6 months after, and a few months after. It's not just like right after or right during. Right?
Cool.
So the effects of psilocybin seems to have a long-lasting effect on these people's outlook in life and their sense of identity. I can't really be that specific because that's a very personal thing, right? It's a very personal question, and so I can't say maybe they feel that they belong more to the world, or maybe they don't. They're more attached to it, and so they're okay with death. But the general consensus is that they have a better outlook, and they seem to be more healed in that sense, right?
Okay.
So medically speaking, what happens, or physically speaking, what happened is once you take these psychedelic drugs, that default neural network is less. It's kind of like less blood flow, right? What they like to call is kind of like a reset button on your computer. What happens a few months afterwards is they scan the brain again. They see that the network in that specific region has actually increased in the density. So more neurons have been created in that part after after that period, because
It's like a permanent effect.
it's a permanent effect. Yes, everybody, a lot of people, I wouldn't say everybody, a lot of people who've experienced psychedelic drugs have reported a permanent change of their mental state.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have quoted that psychedelic drugs have actually been, psychedelic trip have been reported to be one of the most significant experiences in their lives, comparable to the birth of a child and the death of a loved one, right? And these are very important events in your life, and they compare it to psychedelic drugs, right?
Damn.
That's a little bit odd. I mean, the research you brought up here is that there is a permanent effect that I don't disagree with, but the fact that you said because there's less blood flow into your default neural network,
right?
And hence, all of a sudden 3 days later, you're
there's
seeing
more neurons,
new
right?
neurons.
What is going on there?
Yeah.
As again, right? The research is very new and it's not well known. Obviously, my hypothesis is completely not based on
I guess
any
the
neuroscience.
hypothesis here is that because there's such a neuron deficiency,
Right.
and you sort of allowed your brain to understand that, there's a neuron deficiency.
Let's
in that
grow
specific
more
area.
neurons.
Yeah,
Grow
right?
more.
It all makes sense, right? It's kind of like a working out session where you tear down your muscles and you build more, right?
Yeah.
You have no blood flow and maybe your brain's compensating by building more. Right. Of course, maybe all fake, maybe completely nonsense to neuroscientists out there. But that's the result, is there's more neurons in that region, and people identify and have a better, stronger understanding of themselves through questionnaires, through very subjective, interview style questions.
Yeah.
Because there's not really like a objective thing to say. How do I identify, right? Anyway.
Well, I guess there's like kind of could be a biological reason as to measuring your serotonin level in your brain. Or not just surveying. I'm sure there's some sort of MRI scan you could do to see how how much your brain activates
Yeah.
when you're on that substance versus
Yeah.
when you're not, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that's exactly what they saw, right? That neural network was off, and now that it's on, it seems higher density, and
Interesting.
because that region is kind of the self, it matches what the questionnaire says too, right? It could be that. Now it could be that people are lying, but the physical results don't lie. So
Yeah.
I think first of all, I think to wrap this up, it's a very, very interesting research area. And they're slowly finding more and more usage for psychedelics and very exciting results, right?
Right.
Cancer patients, a better self-understanding, a kind of like more oneness, unity in their feeling. These are all very important things. And also, another thing I wanted to mention, I forgot to mention actually, is a lot of people who have those experiences during the trip, they could be really bad trips. Some people who reports during those trips are horrible. I feel like, I really had existential crisis. But afterwards, 6 months after, they have great outlooks as well. So the quality of the trip is very interesting. The quality of the trip doesn't seem to have a direct correlation between
It's more
the
about
effect.
a like physical, literal, biological
Yeah.
effect.
No
that-
wonder-
It could be. It could be. Of course. It's not definitive yet.
Okay, before we move on to the next topic,
Sure.
I just want to like two side note that I want to point out. Okay, first off, getting sticked into an MRI machine after doing DMT or shroom or acid sounds like the worst fucking idea. When you have to stare at a cross, especially a cross, that seems like a lot of like trigger warning.
Yeah.
Like I've done MRI. Before,
Really? I've never
MRI
done that.
scans
Yeah.
before.
It's just like kind of thing,
Yeah, you're stuck in a
Big
tunnel,
magnet, yeah.
big magnet tunnel that is loud. And imagine
Bright lights
with
and everything.
That experience,
Yeah,
when
yeah.
you're on
Yeah.
psychedelic sounds like a nightmare to
Yeah.
me. First off, second off, you mentioned a lot of them report having a very like different outlook, and I think that also aligns with my experience. Or,
Right,
a
right.
lot of my more frequent psychedelic user
Really?
friends, that no, it's like when you're on acid or on shroom. What I've gathered from just my experience or experience of my friends is like people usually notice something about themselves. Obviously, maybe it's to do with the whole ego thing and neural network thing. Is that they can sort of take a step back
Right.
and
See the bigger picture.
See the bigger
Yeah,
picture
yeah.
also, or like, find out something that maybe you've been trying to ignore.
Yeah.
So I'm curious about what did you observe from your experience?
Yeah. So actually, that from my experience, the fighting my inner demons was a lot more from watching that movie than Van Gogh. Obviously, I feel like. So Van Gogh was more about appreciation of art and appreciation of these things that I don't find appreciative of or just brush off. And the movie was a deep dive in my own kind of character and my own upbringing because that coming of age movie really spoke to me in a way that's like there's a lot of things that I take for granted in my life. And one of the things that I take for granted is my friend group.
So your observation is you realize that you have been taking things for granted.
One of the things that I've taken for granted is the friends group that I have. I'm very lucky to have a very tight-knitted friend group, a very supportive and I like to say healthy relationship with my friends.
Yeah.
And it seems that from that movie, that kid who had abusive relationship with his parents, with his brother, which I have a good relationship with my brother, and with his sort of friend group, that misfits of skater friends. Of course, they're good friends, but sometimes there's some people that backstabbed him in the movie, and that felt terrible. And I'm very lucky to have that group of friends that would never do something like that to me, or are there to stick it out with me. And I think
whenever we stab you, we'll just do it right in your face.
Exactly.
We'll never backstab you.
Exactly. You stabbed right in my face, and I really appreciate it because sometimes I need that stabbing, right? So that revelation
You're
to
welcome.
me, and that revelation to me is a deep one, and having friends and having family that matter is really important. It's the important thing in my life, I think.
Ooh. So
In my life.
would you say that it helps you like gain a lot more appreciation to everything you have.
Yes. It's more, yeah, I'm more appreciated and I'm more perceptive of these friends that I have and who are the real friends and real friends, how many of them, right? Like really, really more perceptive of them and appreciate them more and try to invest more time into them. That's my, inner demons, I guess. So
That's some very profound thoughts that I don't give a shit.
and then he's just like,
What are
friends?
Just one. When I look at you two, I just see a bunch of ones and zeros.
Right.
No, but I'm more interested in the research side because one of the reasons why these research are being at least emerged in the last decade or so is because it's socially more acceptable smoking weed or doing DMT, and partially this has progressed to the legalization of marijuana
Exactly.
and a lot of
Exactly.
other drugs
Is
as well,
DMT
right?
more acceptable now? Damn.
DMT, well, first of all, it depends on where you are. DMT is completely acceptable to a lot of the Amazonian tribes or the Southern America where there's just wide usage. It's completely normal usage.
Damn, I gotta try that
But
sometime.
anyway,
Anyway.
back to the
Red
legalization of
The Red
weed.
Indians. No,
Yeah.
I'm just saying this is precisely one of the reasons why people were supporting the legalization of drug use, soft drugs. We're not talking about heroin or cocaine and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And because we can get a better understanding of what it does to your body. And I think more and more people realize smoking weed is not really that much more harmful versus drinking alcohol.
Oh,
and
gosh.
a lot of people would argue drinking alcohol is worse than smoking
So
pot.
much worse, yeah.
You think about the suicide rates,
Domestic abuse.
domestic abuse, car
Drunk
accidents.
driving.
Yeah, drunk driving. These are all associated to
Alcohol.
alcohol. But you never heard. Well, maybe I don't
I
think-
haven't heard any stoners that beat their wives. Let's put it that way. Not a lot. Maybe there are. I don't know.
They're
but-
too relaxed.
Yeah, they're
man.
too relaxed.
They're
Like,
too
just-
relaxed.
Just relax.
It's
man.
more about like it's the whole upper and downer thing, right?
Yeah,
If you
could be.
if you smoke weed, which is a suppressant,
Yeah, it's a suppressant, but
and you just get lazy in general, you wouldn't want to drive. I know people
Yeah.
that would drive after they smoke. Not a very safe thing, but I know someone do that. But then you wouldn't do too reckless stuff
Yes.
in general
Yeah.
when
Yes.
it's a suppressant.
Might even drive slower when you're
Whereas with alcohol,
you get honked.
alcohol can be an can be a suppressor, but
Stimulant.
can also be a stimulant
Yes.
for certain people.
I was doing my written driving test 2
And
years
drunk.
ago.
Yeah.
I was a little bit drunk actually when I did that
No,
test.
if it's written, then it's okay.
No,
You're not
but-
driving.
Yeah, but one of the reasons why you shouldn't drink before you drive is because it actually gives you this false sense of confidence,
That's actually true. That's very true. Yes.
and so it's very discouraged.
So I've heard this from someone. It might have been Jordan Peterson or something like that. That says when you're drunk versus when you're high, is the difference is when you're drunk, you don't take the risk seriously, but when you're high, you're well aware of the risks, but you just don't care. As in, like you know what's gonna happen.
I think the results probably going to be the same if you don't care about the risk, but still go for it. It's a misperception
sorry,
of risk
or-
level,
Or
right?
did I confuse them both? But it's something to do with your evaluation of risk,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
the alcohol basically impairs your risk, and you basically think it's okay.
Yeah, impairs your cognitive judgment,
Yes.
ability to
Yes.
think rationally. And I think that's all fine.
Yeah.
But I think that one of the main difference between alcohol versus weed is the externalities, as in how does it affect the people around you.
Yeah.
Smoking pot, I would argue it's pretty harmless. You sit at home, watch a movie, have a lot of munchies.
Yeah, I mean
But-
it's harmless if you're not working. Right? If you're
It's
working,
harmless
it's-
if you're not working. But if you think about again, just repeating what we've just said, some of the examples like
Yes.
domestic abuse and drunk driving, these are far more harmful than weed. I think slowly people are realizing that, and that's why there are 17 states in the U.S. at the moment where weed is legal.
Wow,
and I think
17. Wow.
17 states started with the first state being Colorado, and
Oh,
later on, I
wow.
think 2-3 years ago, Washington D.C.
Wow,
Legalized
interesting.
pot, and obviously California in 2018, and most recently, I think New York did as well.
And Canada is
In
completely
Canada, it's
legalized.
completely legalized. By the way, when I talk about legalize, I'm talking about legalizing recreational use of marijuana rather than medical use.
Are you talking about also what about decriminalization? Do you know about that?
Decriminalization, that's another reason for why we should regulate marijuana a little bit more.
Right.
Because statistically speaking, right, black or African Americans are 4 times more likely to
Right.
be arrested
Right, yeah,
because
yeah.
of drug possession. And so there's kind of like a social justice argument going on of, oh, we should really. I think Jordan Peterson had
Who's
this
liberal over here?
This is a great quote. Shut up.
Who's liberal over here?
The
Jordan
burn.
Peterson had this great quote. So many people are breaking the law. Does that mean it means the law shouldn't be there? Right? it's
That sounds like a
That is
terrible
kind
argument.
of a problematic
Yeah, that sounds like a
argument.
terrible
that's-
argument.
But it's a great quote. I thought it's quite
Yes,
funny.
sure.
And social justice is another big reason why. But even, I guess, from a non-liberal sense, right? A non-liberal argument would be from a very financial, economic point of view.
Right,
It's
here we
tax
go.
money, man. think about marijuana. The whole cannabis industry. It's around a $20 billion industry as of 2020.
Whoa.
And Uncle Sam takes around what 25,
Say it again.
30%.
And what takes?
Uncle Sam,
Uncle
the IRS.
Uncle Sam.
Sam.
Uncle Sam. Right.
The IRS
Takes how
around-
many? 30%?
Around 25%,
Okay.
corporate tax rate, right? And that's insane amount of money. That's what 500K already.
That's why they're
500 million.
That's why
sorry.
they're giving out these stimmies all day, every day. Huh?
Sorry, 0.5. Sorry. What am I calculating? Anyway, so tax money. And one of the main problems that these cannabis companies, one example is a company called Canopy Growth, which is a U.S. company listed in Canada.
Right.
The reason why they have to be listed in Canada is because they have a lot of trouble banking in the U.S. Although in a lot of states, legislatively, you are marijuana is legalized for recreational use, but at the same time, a lot of banks or financial institutions think it's too risky, so they don't agree to open a bank account for these companies. And what happens is that because you don't have a track record with a bank, it's very hard for you to get loans to grow
credit,
your business.
grow credit.
So
and stuff
credit
like that.
line are very inaccessible for these cannabis
in US.
companies
Wow.
in the U.S. And that's why quite a few companies
That's
have
where
to go to.
Bitcoin comes in.
Here's where Bitcoin comes in as well. How transactions are done through Bitcoin because banks refuse to bank them.
That's so interesting. Back in the days, like Bitcoin was basically used to buy weed when I didn't do it, but like when I had friends who was like, oh, I used to pay like 200 Bitcoin, well, way more than that, like hundreds of Bitcoins,
Yeah,
thousands of
that is
Bitcoins
back
for a bag
in
of weed.
my weed days
Yeah.
too. Crypto was used
Right.
to.
And he's like, if he was saying, if I could find that one wallet, man, I'd quit my job tomorrow, But like, yeah. Anyway, you were saying?
Yeah, I was saying, and so it's very hard for these cannabis companies to grow organically.
Yeah.
In the U.S. So canopy
Organically.
organically,
Yeah. I like that pun.
And yeah, so banking is a major problem for a lot of these cannabis companies. But I guess back to that social justice argument, right?
Yeah.
The reason why it's a lot of people favor cannabis being regulated is because we can use those tax money to fund some of the poorer districts' education,
Interesting, yeah.
and we could teach them about drug use and all that stuff,
Interesting.
so they don't abuse it. Obviously, I think it should still be regulated in some shape or form.
Yep.
But these are some of the arguments on the consumption side, right?
Right.
That's just half of the story.
It
And
is.
the other half of the story is on the distribution, supply chain, or dispenser business side of things,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
You've heard about the South
drug
American
lords.
cartels.
Yeah.
And it's a big problem because a lot of the,
Humongous.
especially in Colombia, Peru.
I've seen Narcos. Yeah.
You've seen Narcos.
I've seen Narcos.
Yeah, they smuggle cocaine mainly
Yeah,
through
yeah.
Mexico, borders of Mexico. More recently, because of the crackdown, they smuggle through Guatemala.
Oh wow.
Um,
interesting.
Put them as little baggies and
Yeah, put them in little baggies.
stick them up there.
It's not really baggies for them. It's more like plane loads.
Yeah,
And then they
plane
just-
loads.
You try to
of-
smuggle like small amount, then
okay.
you'll put them in a little bag and then put it up someone's.
Or they just
Someone's
swallow
ass.
it, or they just eat it, and then they poop it out.
Yeah.
And then sometimes the stomach lining dissolves that layer, and then that goes into the bloodstream, and they OD. But
True.
Yeah, but
So,
the drug lords
what's
really
up with
had a
the
lot
drug
of
lords?
power
Mm-hmm.
in South America, and that's precisely because partially government over there is corrupt, and they really even subsidize to a certain extent these kind
Right.
of criminal activities, and they get some sort of commission out of it, right? You've seen
Yeah.
Narcos again.
Yes,
you know
I have.
better than
I
me.
have.
Basically texting them.
Basically taxing them, but
Yeah.
the tax money goes into your own pocket rather than to the people.
Yes,
Right.
of course.
Of course.
Because
And-
haven't declared it to the people, so the money doesn't exist.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
if you don't get some in your pocket, what's the point of being a dictator?
That's true. And in order to prevent that from happening in, say, the U.S., they're starting to think about legalizing marijuana. One of the policy suggested was to, label marijuana as kind of a medical product and sell them at your local CVS stores,
Right.
or in
Right.
HK Watson's, or
It's like a
in the
health
UK.
product.
It's kind of a health product. You got to
like paracetamol.
It's like paracetamol. Paracetamol.
I have depression. I want some weed. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the debate here is whether it should be over the counter or do you need proper prescription.
Right. That's a good question. So
Cool.
is it going to be like paracetamol or is it going to be like Addies, for example, something like that?
I would imagine it's better. I would imagine. Well,
What's your opinion of it first? Because that's the argument. but
What's
like-
a free market, man?
so you think it should be
What do we
over
want?
the counter?
I think it's
No,
so
but free
easily
argument is not a
accessible.
good. It's not a good argument because there are literally drugs that are prescribed, and should those be over the counter too? Clearly, no.
Well,
right?
I do think. Well, I do think there's a recreational use argument
Mm-hmm.
to it, right? When we clearly label this as a pharmaceutical product, then I don't think it
Right.
should be over the counter. But you need to compare marijuana with something.
Yeah, apples with
like,
apples, like
alcohol,
alcohol,
or tobacco,
cigarettes,
which you don't
yeah,
need a prescription to get it from a local
Yeah.
convenience store, right?
and those things are like known facts that'll hurt you, that'll harm
Yeah.
your health, and they're not good for you. People still take them, and it's legal, and people can
Yeah.
buy them.
But I think an interesting fact to note here is that looking at those 17 states who have legalized weed, and
Right.
also Canada, people have done some sort of time series analysis on whether there's any significant change in terms of weed consumption before and right after legalization. There's none. And
Not
Because if you
surprising.
smoke, then
If
legal
you-
or not, you smoke.
so what's the conclusion here? The conclusion here means if you are a smoker already, you're not going to be affected by whether it's legal or not. It's
If you
already
don't
very
smoke.
easily accessible. Doesn't matter it's legal or not. So whether we want to legalize marijuana or this, argument for war on drugs is
Yes.
that how can we ensure the quality of the product you're consuming
Absolutely.
is of high standard?
Absolutely,
Because
amen, brother.
Because Justin earlier said, the weed you buy here in HK, you have a lot of impurities and
Horse
weird
crap. Yeah,
substances,
it's horse
heavy
crap.
metal.
Absolute
I mean, it's illegal here, but doesn't seem to be stopping anyone.
Yep, and you get all these impurities and all
Yeah.
that stuff, right? You
Dude,
get
hash,
these shitty products.
hash is like the worst.
And
Yep.
it's like you also consider the fact that, weed. I don't think you can get weed that is so bad that can kill you.
Right.
But then if we're talking about other recreational substance that is
Yeah.
spiced,
Yeah.
or
Especially harder drugs, like coke or Molly, which they can actually cut as in add like stuff that's not good for you, really
Yeah.
not good for you, just so it's cheaper, it makes the product easier to push.
Yeah,
Right.
I've heard people adding chalk into your cocaine and all that stuff.
it's not that's not the worst thing. What is that thing that killed Mac Miller?
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's like I forgot what it is, but anyway, yeah, that you can
Pull
cut,
that up.
Yeah, pull that up, Jamie. So yeah, having the government body regulating the
Yeah.
quality
Yeah.
of the drugs, the quality, quality of alcohol, quality of cigarettes. They have to pass certain level to actually allow consumption. It's a fantastic idea.
Now, here's the big problem, right?
Right.
With legalizing
Yeah,
marijuana.
fentanyl.
Fentanyl.
Fentanyl is cut like a lot of drugs, like cocaine or a lot of stuff, are cut with fentanyl, and
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's an
Uh,
opioid, no?
yes, and very little amount of that can already send you to
Yeah.
send you to Mac Miller.
Backtracking what I said, one of the main problems with legalizing marijuana, people are saying, is that in order to get a license to grow or to handle dispensing or
Yeah.
distributing marijuana, it's very expensive to get it.
Right.
And so at the end of the day, it's going to be the big companies. Think about the big companies who are going to encroach in this space. All of a sudden, Amazon starts selling pot on their website.
interesting.
All these local producers, all these local suppliers will be out of the business.
But the argument could be that as the the market or the sector, weed sector is still new. It's still a very, very risky business for
Yeah.
someone to start, small company to start. Amazon wouldn't touch this with a 10-foot pole. There's too much to lose. There's not much to gain at the moment.
Well, they don't have to. They don't have to pour in tens of billions of dollars at once.
That's
they could
true.
Start,
That's
with
true.
a couple $1,000,000.
But in that sense,
they do
right?
have the scale. They do have economies of scale.
They also have the
resources.
distribution.
They have
network,
distribution
right.
center.
Got
They
their
have the
whole
human
chain.
capital.
Yeah. In that sense, you're
And-
right.
And they
Yeah,
have
you're
very
right.
fundamental advantage. And majority of these weed producers or farmers / producers, these are minorities in the U.S.
Right.
Ethnic minorities.
I did not know that.
And those,
Interesting.
and also typically from poor neighborhoods as well. And the argument against legalizing marijuana is that if you do that, the licensing fee would be very expensive, first of all. And second of all, these big companies are going to get into the space, putting small business out of, putting SMEs out of business.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
that
yeah.
typical liberal argument, right?
Right. Yeah.
All
yeah,
your
yeah.
moms and pops are gonna be gone.
Yeah.
You know, Amazon gonna take our
Yeah, yeah,
job.
Amazon's going to take over everything.
Have you guys ever like? Obviously, you've used Amazon. You know when you search up a product on Amazon, it's like, let's say you want to buy a ruler or like I got a
And
camera.
it'll show you
or-
Amazon's choice.
Yeah, and it's always Amazon choice first, the few
Yeah.
rows. And it's like, I want some, I don't know, not lemongrass, like lemon haze or something.
Lemon
That
haze.
specific strain in Amsterdam is famous. So I want some weed. And it's like Amazon's choice of weed first. And then it's all these like small business owners.
Yeah,
That's exactly what's going to
Speaking of
happen,
different
man.
strains, you know, a lot of new strains emerged in the past 5 years or so. Like,
Really?
originally, there were only like 3 to 4
Right.
strains. Now there's hundreds of strains
Yeah.
because the farming technology is improved a lot, and people are mixing different strains
Market
together.
competition.
Yeah, market competition.
Yeah.
Man.
Going?
Okay.
Not sure.
You want to just talk about different strains? Actually, I just found I said earlier.
found the
wheat
document.
list.
Nice.
Wheat list.
Go for it.
I'll just do a very quick read through before I hop on the next topic.
Give us the top 10.
I had a great white shark, strawberry with banana,
Strawberry, you've been out. Yeah, I've heard.
pineapple, blueberry, lemon, OG cheese,
Yes. I heard
mango,
about that.
purple queen, oriental dragon, purple hash, and palm honey hash, and also pure indica.
That was
That
pure
is-
indica?
That was
Palm honey
all-
hash?
No, pure indica
It's
is
a name.
another thing. It's a
Oh,
name.
wow.
It's a name.
Yes. That is
Yeah.
just 2 weeks. I read out like 15, I think.
Wow.
Anyway, back to
Yeah.
what we're saying. So you're talking about like right now there's 17
17 states
that
in
is
the U.S.
legalized for recreational
use.
I don't know if you. I think I don't know if you come upon this, but actually this news hit me quite well. It didn't hit me hard. It's actually pretty exciting that I don't know if you know, but Oregon State, apart from I don't know if you heard any news. You're nodding, so I assume you heard something about Oregon. I don't know if you know anything about Oregon, but earlier this year,
That's where Nike's founded. Anyway.
All right.
Oregon has decriminalized the ownership of all drugs.
Interesting.
So you can possess heroin,
Right.
meth, LSD, oxycodone, all the
Oxytocin.
hard
Oxytocin.
stuff.
Right.
With- like you'll still be fined for possession of that, but it's just $100 fine. Basically, a slap on the wrist for owning meth
Yes. Interesting.
in Oregon,
Very interesting.
which is crazy.
Wait, so you still
Very
get
progressive.
fined. This you get fined. How's it decriminalized then?
No, it's still just
Maybe
small
not
fine.
deinstitutionalized.
Or
That's a better
right,
word,
they
I
will
guess.
send you to like additional counseling, but you're not
Right.
gonna put in jail, for example.
Wait, free counseling for $100? All right, man.
You know what?
Additional counseling.
It's probably it's court ordered therapy, right? It's like you probably don't want that. I mean,
you gotta,
you
you gotta
probably
check in with your your
yeah.
counselor and be like, oh,
Yeah.
past week I didn't do any drugs. You gotta get test, you know.
Yeah.
so
you're gonna butt
I
naked.
saw Kurt Skagat's video. Do you know that?
No,
that
I
channel.
don't.
It's like
Oh,
in the
it's
nutshell.
It's like a infotainment
Yeah.
animation
About,
based channel.
Addiction and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
it did talk about the war on drugs, and it did mention that Portugal actually is similar to that. Portugal is
Oh.
similar in a sense that it doesn't really criminalize drug use or drug possession, stuff like that. It actually has a very, very, I remember it's Portugal, something like that. That it has a very state-owned facility that allows controlled usage of these substances, just like heroin. So if you're a
Wait,
heroin addict,
so you can go to a place to
and
shoot
get
up.
free needles and get special taken care of by these nurses that will help shoot you up in controlled substances, Right.
They'd rather you do it properly. Like
And
if they couldn't
safely.
stop you from doing, rather make sure your needles
That is
sanitized.
very
sure-
interesting.
It is. Now, in that video, it talks about something that's very interesting that I want to maybe go into slightly, right? Is the idea of why something gets so addictive or why someone gets so attached to these substances, right? Beyond the fact that it has physical reactions that you get addicted, the dopamine system, that reward system, beyond that, what else is there, right? So they mentioned something, it's called the rat park experiment. Have you ever heard of that rat park
I
experiment?
think I have.
Yeah.
Right.
I think I've seen that video, but
Right. Yeah. So the experiment is basically very classic experiment about whether or not dopamine or whether or not cocaine is addictive or heroin is addictive. It's just you have a mice, you put them in a cage, and you put this water, you put this heroin lace water next to it. It always goes for the heroin, right?
Tasty.
Always goes and takes it and it dies or whatever, right? That doesn't seem like a fair experiment. The rat has either water or heroin, or it's bored to death. What is it going to do? Take heroin until it dies. Right. So the experiment was to expand this into creating a rat park where there are a lot of rats, both male and females, and a lot of other circle round things and food and all these
It's
things.
a playground for the
It's a
rats, so they
playground
have
for rats.
alternative choices.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what the research found is that, well, these rats rarely use heroin and just go for water and just enjoy themselves in the park and have
The
lots of
conclusion
sex.
here is that people got nothing better to do, and that's why they go for heroin and cocaine.
No, I think the conclusion
It's-
here is we should lock all addicts up in a Disneyland, so they will stop doing drugs.
That may be the solution.
Maybe.
That may be, But
it's a form of escapism, right?
exactly. So it's a form of trying to get rid of the problems they have through using drugs. Maybe because throughout their lives, right, dopamine system that the cocaine triggers is a naturally occurring thing in your brain. You get dopamine by doing things in your brain.
Interesting.
Right. It's only because it's out of wax. It's only because you're not getting it from external sources that you feel that I need cocaine. I need to do that. Right? So maybe the solution is let's all put them all in Disneyland or Ocean Park or somewhere that's fun, get them all hooked up to gaming, and then lock them into a gaming cafe forever. Maybe that's a better solution than,
I
locking
mean,
them up in
it's-
prison.